It's another week of our Trey Helps segment where attorney Trey Harrell helps the Low Country answer important legal questions. This week we're finding out the steps we should take if we ever find ourselves involved in a car accident. Trey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you back. I know this is something that none of us want to think about.
Yeah. Oh.
Unfortunately, as we're driving on the roads, we see this a lot. It's pretty prevalent here.
Yeah. I mean, with so many people, we already have tons of car accidents now, but with so many people moving to the Low Country because of how awesome it is, what are we, like 50 a day or something insane?
Yeah.
Our roads aren't getting any better. So wrecks are just happening and happening and happening. And so you got to be prepared for what you got to do afterwards.
Definitely. So this is something we should be thinking about now. It makes, being in the process, I'm sure, a lot easier. So what's the first thing we should do? If we get in an accident, what's the first thing we should be doing?
I always tell people that, and it's not your typical lawyer answer of call cops or take pictures. I always say, first thing you got to do after you've been in an accident, make sure you're okay, right? I mean, make sure you're okay, check on you, do a quick, make sure nothing's bleeding, no bruises, and check the people in your car and even in the other car. Make sure they're okay. And then if you're okay and you don't need to call 911 and get an ambulance there or whatnot, take as many pictures as you can to kind of document the scene, get witnesses' names. When law enforcement gets there, make sure they have your name, information, if you're a passenger in the car, just to make sure everything is there so there's a record of it. So as the process moves forward, you have the appropriate documentation.
Is the legal term, is it accident, is it collision, is it crash? What is the right term when it comes to this?
It's funny, I think they're all synonymous. As a lawyer, as a plaintiff's lawyer in particular, I like to go with collision instead of accident, only because an accident implies that somebody else isn't at fault, that it just happened, and you could get an insurance company trying to twist that and play with that. So we always go with collision or wreck or crash or any of those work. But also, when you're doing this kind of stuff, accident sounds a lot better for all the folks out there watching, because you don't want to think about how bad it could be.
Do you always have a case when it comes to car accidents? How do you know if you have a case or you don't have a case?
I think typically if you've been if there's significant damage to your car or you're injured, you should talk to a lawyer in that scenario. A little fender bender that's a scratch and nobody's aching or anything, you don't really need a lawyer for that scenario. But if you are injured in any way, if you've got aches and pains starting to progress or anything, talk to a lawyer, because once you resolve that case, there's no going back. So you want to make sure that you've done all the things you need to do to make sure you're okay. And it kind of goes in that scenario.
Once you get that process started, how long does it take to resolve a car accident case?
That's a question we get so often, and nobody really likes the answer because it's a very lawyer answer. It depends, right? It's going to take, if it's my client, it's going to take as long as it needs to. We've got to make sure that the treatment is completed, or as completed as it can be, because once you sign on the dotted line, there's no going back. There's no, oh, I'm still aching, I need more money. That's where it is. And so we've got to make sure that you're okay and you're healed, and we've got to make sure that the car is repaired and all those other things are done appropriately, because of the fact there's no going back, but also because you don't want to get in a situation where you regret it later on.
What happens if the driver denies fault for the accident?
Yeah, this actually happens more than you would think. Even when it's on the police report as somebody else contributed to the collision, they may deny it to their insurance company. And an insurance company is going to do what they can do to delay out the claim or cause an issue in that scenario, because if they can figure out a way to pay you less money, that's what they're going to do. Not because there's some evil corporation. It's the bottom line. An insurance company's duty is to their shareholders, not to random people out and about. So if they're trying to pay you less money purely because they're trying to make more money, and that's just business.
It is.
So that's why you need to talk to a lawyer, to make sure that you got somebody there to make sure you get what you're supposed to get and you can get back to where you were before the collision.
Is there anything that drivers can do ahead of time to protect themselves before an accident even happens?
Definitely. Clearly, there's simple things like just make sure you wear your seatbelt, right? Make sure your kids are in their car seat, in the back seat, and those kind of things. But also make sure your liability coverage on your insurance policy is appropriate, because if someone hits you that doesn't have insurance, you go off of your own policy, and that policy stands in the shoes for them. So you want to make sure your liability coverage is clear. And also, there's something called underinsured motorist coverage, which means if somebody who has low limits hits you, you're able to go after that policy to make sure you can recover and be made whole. And with cars, as much as they cost now to repair and the technology, a fender bender could be costly, could be more than minimum limits now. And so you want to make sure you have enough coverage to cover that, if your sensors and all those things on your car.
You're a great person to call before and after this happens. How can people contact you?
Certainly, you can find us anywhere online at Trey Helps, on social media at Trey Helps right there. Go follow us. You'll see clips of the show, and it's pretty entertaining.
It is.
But you can get a hold of us anything, and you don't just need to call us if you have an auto accident. That's what our office handles, but we're happy to get you to where you need to go if it's some other issue.
Definitely. So, and number one, just drive safe, right?
Yeah, just drive safe, and don't text and drive. And remember, Trey helps.
I will always remember that, guys. Trey helps. Trey, thank you so much for being here today.
You so much.
Everybody be safe out there on the roads.